Buying or selling a home is one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. Call the Holly Ritchie team today for a free market analysis.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Spaying the Need. I am here with Representative Bill Johnson of the 6th District of the state of Ohio. Congressman, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good to be with you, Anthony. Thanks for the opportunity, buddy.
Not a problem. We've been in touch over the years. It's been a very long time. It's good to see you. And from what we've been doing, from charity basketball games to a variety of charity events that you've been happy to attend.
You bet. You bet. Always happy to help.
We talk about that this is not a presidential year. However, we still have very important races throughout the state of Ohio and across the nation with new boundaries being drawn across the board in the state of Ohio. One of them is your district. You actually got some of Congressman Tim Ryan's, the 13th district, into your 6th district. And it's kind of funny when you look at that map, that's got to be a 4-hour driving from one end to the bottom.
Well, it's a little bit shorter than it currently is. It will be shorter in the new district. My current district, Anthony, as you well know, is 18 counties lined up end to end, starting in Mahoning County, going all the way down to Scioto County. That the way I describe it, it's just outside of Cleveland, but just outside of Cincinnati. 360 plus miles, 300 miles of it bordering the Ohio River. Now that is a long drive. That's 6.5 hours from one end to the other. The new district, as you pointed out, takes up a good bit of what is currently Tim Ryan's 13th district, takes up all the rest of Mahoning County. So I'll have the entirety of Mahoning County. In fact, Mahoning County is the new home county for the 6th Congressional District, because it's more populated than Columbiana County is, and 3/4 of Stark County, which is new for me, and the most populated areas in Tuscarawas County, which is also new to me. So between Mahoning, Stark, and Tuscarawas County, I've got about 375,000 new voters, new citizens in Ohio that I'll be representing. So we've got a lot of folks we need to talk to and get to know.
Well, and that's a great piece that we wanted to talk about. Since you are going to be introducing yourself to these nearly 400,000, 376,000 people, tell a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and your background.
You bet. Well, and you cut me off when you think I've talked too long here, Anthony, because that's a little bit of an interesting story. I was not born and raised in the gilded halls of Washington, D.C. I was born and raised on a 2-wheel wagon rut mule farm. We farmed with mules up until I was about 13 years old. We had no indoor plumbing. We cooked and heated on two great big old black pot-bellied stoves. I told that story once to a guy in Washington, D.C. back in 2010, and he stopped me right in the middle of my comments, and he said, "Well, that's crazy. Someone your age farming with mules, why didn't you use a tractor?" I said, "Well, we didn't have a tractor." He said, "Why didn't you borrow one?" I said, "You don't understand. Where I came from, we had to borrow the stinking mule. We didn't even own the mule. We had to borrow the mule from a neighboring farmer, and my granddad would kind of pay a tribute of sorts with 2 5-gallon buckets of corn as feed for the mule in order to use the mule one day a week to plow that farm. But every day was a work day. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. And that's where I learned the hard work, sacrifice, those values, and learned what being a part of a team was all about. I joined the Air Force out of high school, spent 27 years, went from the entry grade of Airman Basic to Lieutenant Colonel, earned both of my college degrees in computer science, both undergraduate and master's degree while I was on active duty. And then after I retired in 1999, set about starting my own companies, some high-tech companies, doing large scale business systems for manufacturing companies all across America. Did that for about 10 years. Got a call one day from a headhunter that said, "Hey, we've got a company in Northeast Ohio that is looking for a chief information officer. Would you talk to them? Because you've got a set of skills that are unique to their business operation." And so I did. I met with the company, came up for the interview, and long story short, they hired me to consolidate the information technology portion of their business of this global company that had 7 different regional IT departments into one single IT department there in the Youngstown area. And so that's what I was doing when in 2009, actually it was in 2007, someone suggested, "Hey, look, a farmer, a veteran, a business owner, corporate executive, we don't get these kinds of people interested in politics every day. Why don't you run for something?" And when they suggested that I run for the U.S. House, I thought they were nuts. So we didn't run in 2008, obviously, but we set about, we found, we got interested in that idea, never had it. It was never part of my long-term strategic plan, but my wife and I both are very service-minded people. And in fact, she's busier today than I am with all the volunteer service work that she does across our state. But we saw the value in getting into public service, and so we threw our name in the hat in 2010, and we won election to the 6th district, and we've been representing that district now for almost 12 years, and I'm just honored and humbled that the people of this district continue to place their confidence in me, and I'm looking forward to getting to know those additional 375,000 new citizens that are going to depend on me to represent them. I'm going to make my case to them, and hopefully here in November, I'll get reelected to represent them as well. So that's kind of the background and where I came from.
And that's a good background to kind of introduce yourselves to people. And what that does is it kind of shows where you come from, how you're came about. And I think that ropes into where we go is, you know, the district, you've been doing it for 10, 12 years. What we know that a lot of federal and state issues come home to your district. They affect not just the 6th district, but the news section as well. So with these local races, what are some of those, what is your plan? We're probably 3-4 weeks, maybe a month away from the November election, which it is midterm still. It's still very important for people to get out and vote.
Sure.
That's huge. So what's that look like in that effect on what those issues are locally?
Well, you know, we have worked for the better part of the last 12 years advocating for policies out of Washington that help create jobs and opportunities for the people there in the Mahoning Valley. And so from that perspective, that's not going to change. We are going to continue doing that work. In fact, one of the things that I am most proud of is the constituent services that my team and I provide, whether it's talking to the IRS, to Social Security, to the VA, to Medicare, you name it, issues and problems that the people that I represent have in dealing with federal agencies. I think that's one of the reasons why we have garnered so much support over the years. But when you look at what the issues are today, Anthony, I don't have to tell you, because you, like everybody else, are experiencing those issues. Gasoline at the pump is almost 2 times the price that it was just in 2020. The price of groceries are going through the ceiling. The price of energy is skyrocketing and is going to get worse if these policies aren't reversed. So the things that I'm going to be working on in Congress as a senior member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, of course, is establishing a national energy policy, one that will codify the kinds of policies that made us energy independent for the first time in 70 years, just a few short years ago. Back in 2019, we were a net energy exporter. We were the world's largest producer of energy. And today, what are we doing? We're begging Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and even Iran to increase their production so that America can get the energy resources that we need. And that's a self-inflicted wound. It doesn't have to be that way. Our region of the country, eastern and southeastern Ohio, has got a wealth of natural resources from oil and gas, even coal, and burning those fuels to provide cost-effective, reliable, and clean, by the way. And when I say clean, I'm talking about reduced carbon emissions, electricity for people all across our region. Because when you talk to the people at the UN Climate Department, even they will tell you that America has done more to reduce carbon emissions over the last decade than any nation on the planet. We've exceeded what were the original goals in the Paris Climate Agreement for carbon emissions. So it's not like I'm a climate denier. I just believe that there are better ways to provide for America's energy needs and the reliability and resilience to our energy grid than this rush to green idea that the current administration has. Europe has tried that already. Relying on wind and solar and renewable energy forms that are not mature enough yet to provide the reliability and resilience for the grid. And now they are beholding in Europe to some of the worst people on the planet, like Vladimir Putin, who uses his energy hammer to force compliance with some of our friends and allies in Europe to make them do what he wants them to do. So developing a national energy plan, energy strategy is going to be top on my list. Reversing the gridlock in permitting so that we can get the pipelines in place all across America to provide those energy resources to generate electricity. I mean, you look at what's happening. We're seeing reports this week that shortages in fuel oil and other resources that not natural gas, not coal, up in Northeast, in Maryland, in New York, and places like that will not allow pipelines to come through. Those folks are going to have a really difficult time if they have the shortages in diesel and fuel oil that are anticipated. It might get really cold for some of them. Well, and so we're going to be working on the permitting to make that happen. And of course, you've got the committee has jurisdiction over healthcare, so giving Americans more choice and opportunity in their healthcare decisions, streamlining the process so that telehealth can be used more robustly and permanently, so that those that are dependent upon Medicaid and Medicare can also use telehealth to get treatment at home rather than having to get out. Go ahead.
Yeah, we talk about that telehealth for a huge reason because of Medicare, Medicaid, and some just normal, just healthy living type
right.
of that. And I think one thing that we learned, especially during the pandemic, is we might have knew there was a little bit of a problem for specific things, but then when the pandemic hit, we found that hole was bigger of whatever poverty education, maybe broadband. Medical was huge, like you mentioned. So how do we come back from that pandemic? You talk about medical and those issues of telehealth. Now with the pandemic, it has opened the hole up to poverty, food shortages, education. How do you do that? Because in your district, the 6th district, we look at, there is a lot of people in poverty in that Appalachian region. Mm-hmm. And how do we make it better for them?
Anthony, that's a very good question. And I can tell you that the way you do that is to put the American people back in charge. I mean, you look at where we were in December of 2019. We had the best economy that we'd had in 50 years. The lowest taxes, lowest unemployment, highest wage growth, highest stock market growth, best border security, best national security, energy independent for the first time in 70 years. The American people felt that they were flourishing. There was a great sense of optimism. How do you go from that to where we are today with the worst economy that we've had in 41 years? Now, 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, which defines a recession. We're now into a recession. Prices are going through the roof, supply chain problems, and we need to turn those policies around. You mentioned the pandemic. Look, the pandemic did not cause the urban-rural digital divide, but certainly the lack of access for broadband in rural parts of the country, particularly rural parts of the country that have long felt left behind by both capital cities like Columbus, the federal capital of Washington, D.C., and instead, what we need to be doing is helping people understand that today, in today's digital economy, access to broadband is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And so for remote working, for remote education and distance learning, for telehealth, that's why I was very, very glad to have gotten some legislation into some of the COVID relief packages that put some waivers in place so we could use telehealth for Medicare services. Take, for example, in January of 2020, there were like 500 Medicare reimbursement claims for telehealth services. By May, 5 months later, by May, there were like 150,000 per month, and it has gone up since then. We need to make those kinds of waivers for Medicare services over telehealth permanent. We've seen that they don't cause a problem. Healthcare providers like them, patients like them. And so those are some of the kinds of things that we need to do to return our economy back to the American people and get the federal government and all these barriers out of the way so that the American dream can thrive again.
Well, and I think that goes to, you talk about telehealth, teleeducation, because when we were in the pandemic, a lot of people didn't have access. So people were scrambling for laptops, and now we have this multi-billion-dollar tech Intel coming to Columbus, Ohio. How does that help the telecom community? Because now you're going to be able to get laptops for education and get that momentum instead of really worrying about across the Pacific Ocean and in Asia.
Oh my God, Anthony, that's another great question. One of the biggest problems that we have is supply chain, and that supply chain problem has been demonstrated very, very acutely in the absence of chips, microchips. Microchips are required in almost everything we do in life, from our automobiles, our appliances in our homes, airplanes, military weapon systems, you name it. business, commerce, everything flows over a digital economy today. And so having microchips is so vitally important. And where do they come from today? They come from some of the worst people in the world that we're having to buy them from. And when we let places like China and India and even Taiwan, they're not our enemy, they're our friends. But when we let other people control that supply chain, it puts America at risk. And so this Intel announcement to invest, at least initially it's 20 billion, but it's going to go up to almost 100 billion, maybe more, to bring the next generation of microchip manufacturing technology right here to America. We're going to begin to rehome that supply chain, and the rest of the world is now going to be dependent on America. And we should learn from the experiences of the pandemic. We should never, excuse me, we should never outsource more than what we need to sustain our own economy. We should never outsource more than the minimum required for our own economy to other countries. If we want to trade on a global scale, and we should, because we have the largest economy on the planet, we are the problem solvers of the world. Virtually every modern convenience known to mankind was born right here in America. Much of that innovation happened in our state. You look at the light bulb, you look at the airplane, you look at oil and gas development and coal development, medical technologies. A lot of those kinds of things were born right here in our state. So we've got an opportunity to lead the way to rehome that next generation of microchip technology, and we need to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And we look at that, we probably won't recoup those chips probably for another year or two because they're building the plant. So we look at it that way. But let me roll over to some.
Well, but Anthony, let me point out those countries that today provide the current state-of-the-art microchips,
right?
They know that America is going to control the next generation of microchips,
right?
So they're going to want to deal with us. Do you know what would have happened? And a lot of people had concerns about the investment that we made for the CHIPS Act. Had we not made the investment for the CHIPS Act that incentivized Intel's ability to invest those hundreds of billions of dollars in microchip technology here in America, had that gone overseas, there would have been no incentive for those countries that provide today's state-of-the-art microchip technology to the United States. We would be really selling ourselves short long-term in technological innovation. You're talking about a real national security problem.
Well, and you look at that, and that complex will bring very good paying jobs to that area and in the region, depending on if you're remote or depending on that level of availability per Intel.
Yeah, and have you heard about the wages that those jobs are going?
They're going to be well over in six figures.
Oh yeah, you're talking about wages up in the $170,000 a year price range, wage range. You're talking about some really good paying jobs on the top side, but like you said, well in advance of six digits.
Right. And we look at that's a domino effect. They'll pay taxes, they'll provide safety services. And we look at the climate locally and nationally about violence, curbing the violence in our areas. I think my question is, how do you do that? What steps do you take as a congressman to help curb violence in your district? Because I think everyone wants to know. There's so much depending on shootings and just violence in the communities. How do you deal with that?
Well, I can tell you that I strongly support law enforcement. I always have. I always will. In fact, I participated just a little over a week ago in an operation to nab some of the child predators and pedophiles in our region. And I was really grateful to Sheriff Jerry Green and his team, interagency team of about 50 law enforcement officials that let me observe and participate in that. They caught 15 child predators, and I was a part of 2 of those operations about 2 weeks ago. So I very strongly support law enforcement. From a congressional perspective, though, look, I can talk about it a lot, but this really comes down to state governments and local governments and local mayors, local township trustees and city councils all across America. You're not seeing a lot of the defund the police, anti-law enforcement kinds of attitudes here in eastern and southeastern Ohio. It's almost right the opposite. We understand the value of keeping our communities safe for our families, for our children to go to school. It's these big liberal states and liberal cities that have lobbed on to this idea that somehow because you've got a bad police officer that makes headline news that all police are bad. Look, I'm going to tell you, we got bad politicians, we've got bad doctors, we've got bad lawyers, we've even got bad clergy. There's a bad apple in every bunch, right? There is no perfect institution in this country, but just because you got a few bad apples does not make the whole barrel rotten. And we need to be supporting law enforcement if we want our neighborhoods and our communities to remain safe. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Appreciate that. Let me go, because we're almost out of time here, and I want to get to a couple more questions. What is your biggest professional mistake that you've made along the way that you've kind of learned lessons from? Because I think everyone learns something in what they do. And I think that's a question I've always wanted to ask a politician, because they've learned probably quite a bit.
You know, my entire life, my faith and my professional life informs the work that I do in Congress. Probably the biggest professional mistake that I made. I don't know whether you know this or not, Anthony, but I actually thought of the concept of cloud computing. I didn't call it cloud computing. I called it decisionable information. I thought of this concept in 1987, shortly after I got out of graduate school, and I began working on the concepts of digital and mobile device technology. The hardware was not there, and the hardware advances did not come about until the late 90s, early 2000s. And I had worked so hard to build this. I got a patent on it. It's called a portable information collection and presentation device. That's the long title of the patent. But I was so wedded to this idea, and I thought that it was my destiny to bring it to fruition. I had an opportunity to have an investor come along that had brought large technological systems to the market before, and they wanted more than 51% of the company to do that. And I said no. I
would too. I mean, come on. I would say no. I'm the one that started this.
Well, here's what I learned. A whole lot of a little bit of something is worth a lot more than a whole lot of nothing. And so had I gone with that company and taken a smaller portion of the prize, there's no telling what I would be resourced to do today. I'd be able to help more people and do more things than I did. Like I said, I hold a patent on this technology, but by the time I tried to raise the kind of capital to commercialize this idea, the dot-com failures had occurred and you couldn't raise capital for technology programs. So what I learned was don't try to be always the guy on the pointed end of the spear. Be a part of a team and understand the value of bringing people together to help you accomplish a goal, because I had an opportunity to do that and I missed it.
And that's a great point, because I always like to say I'm always never the smartest person in the room, but I'm going to hire the smarter people than me to do what we need to do, because I may be the person that's spearheading, but those people can add so much energy and so much potential to what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, Congressman Johnson. I know you have a busy schedule going back and forth to DC. At the end of all my shows, I like to ask some follow-up fun questions so people really get to know you and really you can kind of just enjoy the moment. Sometimes I'm told these questions are harder than the ones that I should say the politician questions. So basically your answer can be either professional or personal. It's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. So here we go. What's your best memory in life?
My best memory in life, probably two of them, because I can't qualify between these two, but one of them is the day that I met my wife. And I remember that like it was yesterday.
Lovely lady she is.
It's a great memory. And then the day my children were born, I remember those days. And those are the memories that are important to me.
Yeah, I have a 1-year-old now, and trust me, I'm enjoying it other than the teasing part at night. Best accomplishment?
I think the best accomplishment is, at least since I've been in Congress, is the great constituent services team that we've built, and the literally thousands and thousands of people that we have helped get what the federal government should be providing to them. In some cases, getting the federal government out of the way so that they can get what they need. But the constituent services that my team and I provide, that's a big accomplishment.
Okay. Who's your role model?
Golly, there are so many, because like you just said, surrounding myself with strong people that are smarter than I am. My mom was a great role model for me from a professional perspective. The one person in my life that I wish I had met that I never did, Ronald Reagan. I think he epitomized collaborative leadership, surrounding himself with people that were smarter than he was to get the job done. It really kind of set the stage for the kind of leader that I wanted to be. But I have a lot of role models that are a lot smarter than I am, and I couldn't name them all for you right now.
I'll expect that list in a couple weeks.
Okay.
And then the final question, if there were, and you may have already answered this from the previous question, but if there was one person you would want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
I think it, and I hate to sound redundant, but the one regret that I have in my life is never having met Ronald Reagan. I know many people that have. I have some personal friends that met him on a very personal basis, and they told me that he was everything in person that he appeared to be in public. And I wish that I had an opportunity to meet Ronald Reagan and to sit down and talk to him, because I think at the end of the day, when history completes the writing of his legacy and his story, we're going to find out that Ronald Reagan was one of the greatest presidents, greatest leaders that our country has ever seen.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman, I appreciate your time. If anyone wanted to contact your offices or find you on a website, where would they go?
Hey, they would go to www.billjohnson.house.gov. They can find me there. All of our contact information is out there. They can follow me on Twitter at Rep Bill Johnson. They can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Rep Bill Johnson. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to my office if you think I can be of any help, particularly if you've got a problem with a federal agency.
And that's good to have that middleman to help you weave through red tape.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Congressman Johnson. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Go to the polls in 3 to 4 weeks. Get out and vote. We want people to be out and vote. We appreciate it. If you want to see any more podcasts, stories, or events, please go to spayingtheneed.com. Everyone have a great night. Thank you, Congressman, and good night, everyone.